In our last lesson, we worked with different layouts. We showed the border layout and the flow layout to demonstrate how we can add buttons to our UI and position them in different places using the border layout or the flow layout to either position things in the northwest, south, east, or center of the screen, or lay things out, one by one, just like we did with the button panel in our last lesson. In this lesson, we're going to make those buttons actually do something. So in order to do that, I need to implement an interface. And what an interface does is an interface is really just a specification of some methods that I need to implement. So think of an interface as something I need to comply to, something that I need to write out, something I need to add functionality to so that it does something more specific. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. I'm going to call it button click color change handler.java. Which is kind of a mouthful, but we want to make sure we start naming our files more appropriately. So I'm going to declare my class, public class button click color change handler, and I'm going to have this implement. So implements the ActionListener interface. Now I need to import that java.awt.event.actionListener. I'm also going to import java.awt.event.actionEvent because I'm going to receive that in my method when a button is actually clicked. So what the ActionListener interface says is that I need to implement this method, public void action performed. And if I do that, that's really all I have to do. That makes this class complete. If I write this out and I Java C button click color change handler in order to compile this, that's it. Now you'll see if I type this and I don't actually implement this, we'll go ahead and comment this out. And now I try to compile. Here it says that this is not abstract, it doesn't override the method action performed. So this is what you have to do when you implement an interface. You have to implement all of the methods that are within that interface. Now ActionListener fortunately only has one method, and that's this action performed action event method. And what we're going to do now with this button click color change handler is we're just going to add a constructor that's going to allow us to interact with some of the different components. So I'm going to declare a constructor, public button click color change handler, and I'm going to give this constructor a JPanel, and I'm going to give it a color. Now in order to use those, I need to import them. So I will import javax.swing.jpanel, and I will import java.awt.color. Now I'm going to hold on to these. Private JPanel panel private color color. And here we're just going to set those values. This dot panel is equal to toChange. This dot color is equal to color. And remember, we use that this keyword to identify that we're referring to this color as opposed to the one that is a parameter. This says that we're going to refer to this object's value instead of the method's value, or the parameter's value. So now that we've done that, we can very easily react to this action performed method. We're going to have this action performed do one very simple thing: panel set background to color. So if you think about what this class does now, it's actually very simple. We create this with a particular JPanel and a particular color. We hold references to those, and then whenever this action is performed, whenever someone calls this method, all we're doing is setting the background to this color. And this might not make much sense just yet, but if we go ahead back into our test buttons program, now we can start adding this action listener as a value to some of these buttons. So we've already created this build button method that's going to allow us to construct these buttons, so we can actually very easily add an action listener to these buttons. So I'm going to use button.addActionListener new button click color change handler, and we're going to pass in the JPanel and the color. Now, because this is an action listener on the button, anytime this particular button is clicked, whether it's the blue button or the orange button, the red button, the green button, or the magenta button, whenever that is clicked, we're actually going to send that event to this button click color change handler. And that is going to call the button click color change handler's action performed method, which you know now it's going to take this JPanel and set it to this color. And we can test that. Go ahead and run. Now that we have this up, if we click the blue button, it's going to change the panel here to blue. It's going to change the panel to orange or red or green or magenta. Now if we want to change the main panel, we can change things a little bit in our code, but we're going to need to add an additional parameter to our build button method. So if we want to change the main window area, JPanel to change, now we can just change this to change. Now if we move down a little bit, we can't just simply build our buttons with the button panel. We need to pass in our main panel as well. In order to do that, we need to move this upward. If we refer to main panel right here, it actually isn't defined yet. And if I write my code and I try to compile, I'm going to get a few errors. But one of those errors is going to be cannot find symbol. Basically, we haven't actually defined anything for main panel yet. So let's go back in, and we will move our main panel declaration one step higher. There we go. So now main panel is being constructed, and we can pass that into each one of our methods. Let's compile. We'll run, and if we click blue or orange or red or green or magenta, we get the entire window changing at the top now. Now we could actually create a different color or click handler that would allow us to change both JPanels, but we can leave that for an exercise if you'd like to try it out. So we've learned a little bit about interfaces here. We've learned a little bit about how to handle events in Java, and we've actually demonstrated how we can use those events to change the look of our UI. So hopefully in future lessons we'll build further on what we can do with these user interfaces. But for now, thanks for watching, and don't forget to practice your coding.